if you look at your average tier list, you're often taking the culmination of information on the topic and kind of plotting it against the success rate. And that's how you're getting something like this, where you have Bear tier 1, number 1, then you have Brewmaster all the way down to DK last. But that's kind of taking the summary of everything that's there and assuming that the pick is putting its best foot forward, and then that's how it's making its biggest impact. Ever since 915, I've been thinking about things in the opposite direction. I've been thinking, instead of what's the best covenant for X tank, I've been thinking what's the best tank for X covenant. So I wanted to do a little fun video here. I hope that you guys will get engaged in this in the comments and leave your thoughts down below, because I don't really like Venthyr as a covenant. I don't think I would ever play Venthyr. And honestly, as you know, many people probably are surprised to hear from me, that makes me not want to play a tank or a spot or a role in general that would be beneficially Venthyr. So, that's why I don't play Paladin as Venthyr. That's why I don't play DK as Venthyr. I would just rather, like, if it was somehow the only option was Venthyr, I would just not play that pick like that. I just wouldn't do that. So I look at things a lot different. And instead, I've been thinking about what would be, if I really wanted to play a Night Fae tank, that was the best option, what would actually a tier list look like for that? So we're going to do that now. I think this will be fun, and I hope that you guys will be engaged. And if you're watching this live, I hope you're having a great Thanksgiving. But every covenant ability is different, I think, for every different class and spec and everything. So this is 100% just opinion based. Okay, this is just a fun little video that I've been thinking about doing for a while. So let's start with perhaps the most interesting, always, I think, on all 6 tanks, the most interesting covenant, and that's Kyrian, okay? So again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, but my top 1 through 6, what would be the number one, if you really, really wanted to play a covenant, specifically Kyrian, what is tier 1 number 1 tank to play as Kyrian? I think it's going to have to be Paladin. I think Divine Toll is tier 1 number 1 regardless. It's one of the most interesting spells in the entire game, and it's incredibly powerful. On top of that, their legendary for that spell on all 3 specs is excellent, and it's going to become even better season 3 of Shadowlands, because you're going to have to wear that as well anyway. So I think Kyrian is a slam dunk on all 3 specs, but I think it's the most flavorful spell probably out of all the permutations we can talk about today. I don't think there's a more flavorful spell than Divine Toll on a Prop Paladin, because Prop Paladin has such a great talent to make Avenger's Shield give you a health, kind of a buffer there. So it's very good. So that would be my tier 1 number 1 overall. I think the next one, though, is definitely going to have to be Demon Hunter. So that would be probably, let's just say overall instead of tiers. But yeah, number 2 overall would be Demon Hunter. Elysian Decree remains to be one of the most broken spells in the entire game. It does absolutely insane damage. And even though, some of the other Covenant spells are really competitive at the times, Elysian Decree is just so remarkably noticeable when you see it. You know what's happening. The spell is very vibrant. And I do think, a Kyrian Demon Hunter has been a staple of that class for a long time, even though now more people are trying to play different ways. So I think it's a very good option, especially if you're a little bit more interested in kind of putting your best offensive foot forward. Both of these first 2 picks can be very good offensively because of that spell. And if you don't take that spell for those classes, it can actually be a completely different situation. Then next, I would say, is Warrior. Spear of Bastion is another very unique spell, and it's a pretty offensively charged ability, but it also has some nice utility as well. And I think of all the, between Arms, Prot, and Fury, that this would be the best one to have as Prot, because it's really useful. When the mobs are going to try to run, or when you're gonna need a spell like that. Whereas a DPS is just going to throw it down, and then sometimes you might try to kite out of Sanguine, or something might happen, and it might actually be detrimental. But as a tank, you know exactly how to use the spell, and it just looks cool. It's a nice little spell, pretty small radius, and it's a 1-minute CD. Anytime you see a low CD like these first 3 abilities are, it's always awesome. I love using the Covenant spells, and I think the Kyrian spells are all really short, actually, now that I think about that. This seems to be like a trend with the Covenant, so it fits in really well in my opinion, with the Warrior fantasy. The Spears, it's pretty cool. I had actually given feedback on trying to get Warrior some kind of death grip type spell, like on maybe they throw a chain, and if it's it's like a skill shot, and if the first mob it connects with, it pulls them, kind of like an opposite type thing for death grip. So this is somewhat similar, and I'm glad that they went that route. Next up for me is going to be Blood DK. Number 4 overall. Shackle the Unworthy is a very interesting spell. It's very visually noticeable too, even though it's a mob spell, like it's not something that you put on the ground. You know, like the other, the Vengeance one is very noticeable on the ground. But this spell is actually like kind of got a pretty big aura to it. Like you can see it on the target. And it's actually really fun to use. There's a very unique playstyle with it attached to its legendary, which I don't know a ton about the other classes, legendaries and stuff, and how good they are. But this one seems like it's got to be one of the best ones. I know the Paladin one is excellent as well. But this is a really fun playstyle, and it's actually really like I really like it personally. So Shackling and Worthy seems like a really nice spell, especially for any tank. A 1 minute CD. And I think that that's, number 4 overall pretty comfortably. I really like the way it works out. I love the way it looks. And I kind of think it's kind of funny. Like a Blood DK is a Kyrian. It's almost a little, it makes you a little chuckly. Like, it's like, what's going on there? Okay, Weapons of Order. This is a 2 minute CD. For Brewmaster, your mastery is increased by 10%. Additionally, Keg Smash cooldown is reset instantly, and enemies hit by Keg Smash take 8% increased damage. So, pretty good one. A little boring, though, in my opinion. I never really liked this one when I played it and tested it out. 2 minute CD again, so that's a big detriment to me. These last two I don't really like as spells overall. So this would be like tier 3, these two. And Kyrian Monk, it's pretty good because obviously, the whole mastery situation and everything that comes with it is good. It's solid, but I just don't think I would use it. And it doesn't really feel like a Kyrian spell. It feels like maybe that should have been the Fallen Order. Like they kind of maybe wanted to combine these two spells or something, but not my favorite spell. And it's definitely the tank I would say it's probably the tank I would be least interested in Kyrian on if the Druid one wasn't so strange. So this spell, I just don't like it at all. Honestly, it's probably my least favorite Covenant spell out of all these options. Forms a bond with your ally every 1 minute. You may empower the bond for 10 seconds, granting you an effect based on your partner's role and granting them an effect based on your role. So for balance, it's interesting and stuff. But for tank, it's redirecting 40% of the damage they take to you. So that's just useless. I mean, that's useless, right? Like, I don't know why anybody would take that. That just seems awful. It's almost like if I can just get the DPS one, like the DPS one is actually insanely good. It energizes your bonded partner, granting them 20% of your damage as an additional arcane damage. I don't actually know what the legendary uses for that, like how it works out, but redirecting 40% of the damage they take to you. No, I don't ever want that as a guardian. That's actually awful. And the big issue with that is I like a lot of these spells because they're versatile. They can be used in different types of content. Like this has no value outside of 5-mans. It has no value when you're alone either, right? I mean, this spell doesn't work when you're alone. Am I wrong about this? So anyway, that's clearly number 6 overall for me for the Kyrian Covenant. Now we'll do Venthyr just because it's next on the list. And like I said, even though it's my least favorite Covenant, like just as an aesthetic and a theme, I definitely could see myself really liking some of these. And I think tier 1 number 1 would actually be Bear. I really like Bear's concept here, Ravenous Fury. 3 minute CD, so obviously we know it lines up really well with what Bear's already doing. And out of all of the specs, I think this is the coolest version of this. Ravenous Frenzy is really, really neat for Bear because you're already always going to be like, there's no way that you could mess this up. And increasing your damage and your haste has huge potential. It also increases your healing as well, right? So it's very, very high potential. You're getting value out of every element of the spell. Whereas like, Balanced Druid or other, they have to like really, really ramp hard to get a lot of value out of this spell. But for Bear, it's just so easy. Like it's so freaking easy. Use this with Incarn. I mean, that's it. That's all you need to do, right? And so it's such a cool spell. It looks pretty cool. I like the concept of it for Bear. I wouldn't say I like it for the other, especially like Resto Druid. I think it would be absolutely horrendous for Resto Druid, which is a shame, but I really, really like the concept here. So I think that would comfortably be tier 1, number 1 for me. Let's just go down to tier 2. It starts to really drop off because, like I said, I don't really like the Covenant, but I really like the concept of Ashen Hallow. So this is going to be number 2, Paladin, Ashen Hallow for Venthyr, because it's so potent on a single target. Now, when we talked about this Covenant a long time ago, I said this was going to be a very, very bad Covenant for Prop Paladin because the whole nature of especially Mythic Plus, it's like you don't really ever want to front load all your damage into a 4-minute CD as a tank. That's just not going to help anybody. You're not like threat is going to be an issue. You're going to use it and then you're going to have no problems with threat. And then for the next 4 minutes, you're not going to have anything. But I failed to understand just how powerful this spell was going to make the ability, like the whole kit. It was going to become like a focal point with the legendary and all the playstyle changes that have happened. So I think I could easily see myself playing a lot of Venthyr Paladin simply for raiding. If I could play a Venthyr Paladin in raiding, I think it would be a substantial boon for any raiding group. That is a lot of single target damage and potentially group healing you could offer, which fits in perfectly to the Paladins, some of my favorite things on the Paladin right now. And I have to say I quite like it. So I like the concept. It's not my favorite spell, but it does, it seems like it would be really fun to have as a prop Paladin for any type of single target content. So despite the fact that I never use it, I'm going to say number 3 overall is Swarming Mist. I have no interest in using Venthyr. Frankly, I don't feel like it's better than Night Fae right now. But I'm biased, whatever, no problem. Let's not worry about that. Instead, what I really like about the concept isn't the spell, what it does, it's what it looks like. It's just so perfect for Blood DK. If that could just be some kind of conduit or some kind of like glyph or something that I can just have that blood misty thing flowing around me all the time, it just looks awesome. I mean, that's actually really, really cool looking. And it's a 1-minute CD, which is perfect. It fits Blood DK really well. 10% dodge on the pull, plus the extra damage is really nice. And obviously, the ability itself is quite powerful. So it's a very good option. Door of Shadows is also very good for Blood DK. The whole theme is really good for Blood DK. Even though I play and look a little differently on my DK, I think most people out there would probably think Blood DK, Swarming Mist, it's a slam dunk. And I assume that's probably why it was so popular. Not only because it was powerful, but because it really fit the theme really well. So I know a lot of people will think that Fallen Order is not a very good spell, but I think it's a very unique spell for a tank. And I'm not exactly sure how the buffs have affected it in 915, but I really like the concept. The only thing I don't really like about this, though, however, is that it's a 3-minute CD. And again, I do feel like Monk is not benefiting a lot from these types of long CDs because of how active and how the tank can potentially reduce a lot of stuff. I don't really think it works very well, but I'm comfortable in saying that I like the concept enough to make it the number 4 overall for this. It's a really neat idea, and I just wish it was a little bit more powerful, and I wish you would see a little bit more players use it, because, I mean, presumably it could offer some healing, it could offer some versatility from the role, and it's not something that you really see a lot. Like, I don't really feel like a lot of tanks are offering that kind of versatility nowadays, so it's really nice to see a Covenant ability that can play into that. But it is a 3-minute CD, so it makes it feel a lot harder to actually use and a lot harder to care about. Number 5 overall is going to be Sinful Brand. I love the concept of Sinful Brand, but not the spell itself. A 45-second CD, it's pretty cool, but the best part about the spell, and the only thing, like, the really, really, really cool part of the spell, but the thing that kind of makes me upset is, at the same time, is Metamorphosis' ability to spread it, or to apply it, actually. It doesn't even spread it. So really cool, 45-second CD. It's fine. It's a nice single target nuke. That's fine in some ways. I'm sure it'd be really good for like world content, just having that extra single target damage out there. But I will tell you, there is a really cool element whenever you jump into a pack and pop meta and you see all the targets around you with Sinful Brand. It is just so freaking cool. The problem is, I think like the Metamorphosis situation with Vengeance, especially, I just don't really think I don't know. I have a lot of trouble being confident with that spec and that spell in general. It just it doesn't even really look that good either. It's just like, I just feel like they made Metamorphosis for Havoc, and they probably shouldn't have even given it to Vengeance, because I just think it's holding the class back. I think it's far too clunky of a CD compared to other tank CDs, but I love the fact that it synergizes with this. If that was just the spell, and like somehow it made Metamorphosis up twice as often or something like that, and you couldn't even use it on a single target, I think I would prefer that for Sinful Brand. But the other issue for me is, like, it doesn't really feel like it has any cool visual effect like we saw with Blood DK, or like some of the other, especially Paladin. It just doesn't really have a lot going on visually either. So I think that would be number 5 overall. And number 6 overall, I have to say, regrettably, is Warrior. Anytime, I have to say, especially because it's Execute, anytime you're replacing a spell with the Covenant, I'm just not really It's surprising to hear probably, but I don't really like that. I definitely would prefer a new spell. Like that's the cool part of the Covenant. You're not losing anything by gaining it. You're gaining a new spell. And as a warrior tank, it's just like, why would I take Condemn? So that does make the mob deal less damage to you, but you can only use it at certain times, right? I mean, like this has actually got to be awful to use in 5-mans. I can't even imagine how complicated this must be to get value out of in 5-mans because it's the exact same spell as Execute, which I mean, I don't know if people are using it in 5-mans or what, but it's like, man, that is just a disappointing spell. I'm actually, yeah, it's the same thing like with the Druid one for Kyrian. It's like, man, it's just a disappointment, and it's probably awful in many ways. It probably is just too hard to use, and it sounds like it'd be great for DPS, but it's just probably absolutely awful for tanking. So that's how I feel about that. Next, we're gonna do Necrolord. And tier 1 number 1 overall is going to actually be Warrior. I absolutely adore the concept of Conqueror's Banner. I love the concept, and not only Conqueror's Banner, but the whole aesthetic of a warrior. I could see myself being an orc, or maybe even an undead warrior, or maybe even like a human warrior, and something like, a little bulky and a little stocky looking in that plate gear, throwing that banner down, and it makes me very excited. Plus Fleshcraft is awesome. Obviously, it's going to be equally awesome for all 6 tanks, but I think it would look really cool. It's just like a warrior. There's almost like an aesthetic that I can't help associate because the banner concept is really cool. They changed this like 3 different times since the alpha, and it was one of my favorite spells when it was first launched, but it's just awful at the time. And now it's a lot stronger. I don't know if people are using it. It's certainly not the best Covenant spell out of all of them, but it's just so quintessential. Like if I actually was really big on playing a Necrolord, this would be my only choice. This is so clearly the choice. I wouldn't even, like this is tier 1 number 1, and then the next one number 2 is going to be on tier 3. That's how big of a gap there would be for Necrolord. Just because when I see that warrior in that Necrolord transmog, throw down that banner with Fleshcraft up. That is the quintessential Covenant experience that I would want to see. So yeah, tier 3, number 2 overall is going to be Abomination Limb. This is one of the most unique spells out of all of them because of its utility. Its damage is awesome, and it's pretty cool as a Blood DK to have that, but frankly, I just don't really see it being a very good spell if it wasn't for the ability to grip. Like the damage and the mitigation potential it offers is mediocre. I feel like it's okay. I'm actually not impressed with the damage, even though it's only a 2-minute CD. But the actual ability to grip a ton of mobs is so freaking awesome. And even though you're a Blood DK, you have the ability to do that already with much greater effect than the other 2 specs of Death Knight. Abomination Limb just looks the part. Like I have to say, if I was super serious, if I wasn't like thinking about things from the Covenant perspective, I think Abomination Limb and Necrolord would be what my Death Knight would be. Because it's not only just about the damage and the snap threat, and the potential increase in mitigation, but also that extra utility, man. You're already a utility class. Blood DK plays so well with Abomination Limb, plus Fleshcraft. I mean, Fleshcraft is something that's really good for all 6 tanks, I'm sure, but when you have Vampiric Blood, and you can get those Fleshcrafts up much, much higher, it's a really, really good little flavor. And also, again, DK looks really good as a Necrolord. Like, obviously, very high. It makes a lot of sense to think Necrolord, DK. They kind of go really well together. So next up, I am going to go ahead and say Bone Dust Brew is what we have here. I think I really like this spell from a DPS perspective. And I think I would probably enjoy it as an actual tank as well. I've never really used it. I didn't really get to test this much in the alpha, but I just really like the concept of Tiger Palm Keg Smash reduces the cooldown of your brews by an additional 1 second when striking enemy with your Bone Dust Brew, because it's actually a brew itself, right? So there's some really unique, almost like weird little situations that you could have here, and I think this is going to play in really well with the actual the next tier set that's coming out in season 3. And I am looking forward to seeing how that plays. It seems like certainly a much more unique spell than some of the other ones, especially in how it's going to impact with the tier set. So I could easily see myself playing a brew, Necrolord too, because I do think Fleshcraft is also going to be really good for them, and it fits what they might need as well. So that would be on a tier on its own. And then again, there'd be another giant drop off here. And, I kind of don't know if I can pick one at this point. I'm going to go ahead and try Adaptive Swarm at number 4 here. Frankly, the rest of these spells do not interest me, but if there was one that was interesting to me, it would probably be Adaptive Swarm. It seems pretty interesting just how the concept works, but I really like the fact that it's such a short CD and then it kind of finds a new target on its own, preferring to alternate between friend and foe up to 3 times. It's a little bit, a little versatile spell. I like the concept on paper. I don't know how good or bad it is, but honestly, Bear, the other two below Bear is even less interesting. But like Bear just doesn't really make sense to me as a Necrolord. It doesn't look like a class that could be a Necrolord. I guess there's like that Bone Bear skin that you can get from Legion, and maybe that looked all right. But I don't know. Like the whole Necrolord theme feels like a plate, something very kind of imposing. And I'm here, I'm standing here, and you got to get by me. And that's what a Necrolord feels like, and that's why I like that banner concept so much. But the rest just don't interest me very much. I guess at that point, number 5 overall would then have to be Fodder to the Flame. Another spell that I don't know much about. It does seem kind of cool, though. I'm going to say I like it a little bit, even though, 2-minute CD or whatever, not really the most interesting spell. It just seems kind of cool that you could summon all these demons, man. Like, it's actually kind of cool. And I like the concept here, but I don't know, like throwing glaive at it. It's just like the whole thing seems really clunky, even though it's obviously pretty powerful. I'm just not I don't like the concept. The only thing I like about it simply is the fact that a demon is coming running out at you. And then Paladin is just last. I mean, Vanquisher's Hammer is just awful. I really don't the spell is just this is definitely the worst of the 4 covenants for Paladin. And again, Paladin as Necrolord. I mean, it makes so much sense as Kyrian, but Paladin as Necrolord, it just doesn't really fit thematically. I don't feel like I could ever play it and feel like it would make sense. And I don't think it's any surprise that Night Fae is my favorite covenant. I just love everything about it. I love the zone, love the music, I love the characters. It's kind of funny. It's kind of like wacky, you know what I mean? I like it a lot. I like the forest concept, the enchanted forest, all that stuff. So honestly, I think all 6 of these I just like a lot more than every other spell. Like honestly, if I did a separate tier list to just rank my favorite spells, like regardless of covenant, I think all 6 of these would probably be 1 through 6, and then everything else would come after. Maybe Divine Toll would be somewhere in the top 5, but so it's hard for me to choose. Soul Shape's awesome. There's really cool stuff, but it's kind of not even that hard to choose. Tier 1, number 1, it's just got to be Druid. I mean, it's got, first of all, like the Druid theme is, just like Paladin and Kyrian go well together, and Warrior and Necrolord go well together. This is the equivalent of that for Night Fae. Druid is exactly the Night Fae, like Druid and Hunter, a night elf hunter or a night elf druid. It's just so quintessentially Ardenweald. You know what I mean? Like that's exactly what I expect from that covenant. And on top of that, they have one of the coolest spells in the game. So Divine Toll, I always say, is one of the coolest spells. Convoke is equally cool, but kind of for different reasons. The reason I love Convoke mostly is because it allows you to have access to spells you don't even have. And I've been playing a lot of those no spec characters as well. So even besides, I assume Guardian can do this too. But the coolest part about this is like a non-balanced druid can use Starfall, can have Starfall on their damage chart. And it's just so freaking cool. I love that. I absolutely adore that. The spell looks awesome. It feels so uniquely. I mean, and it's a short CD. It's going to be even shorter with the legendary, which everybody who plays Night Fae is going to then have. I think almost everybody's using it anyway now. It's just so cool, man. I love Convoke. So Druid, clearly tier 1, number 1 overall for me, of a covenant that I absolutely adore. Might be one of the coolest spells in the entire game. Not even a CD, not a covenant spell. One of the coolest spells in the whole game. And I really hope that somehow, I have a feeling it's probably going to stick around maybe as a balanced talent, but I really hope there's somehow that they can incorporate some of these into the game permanently, and Convoke the Spirits has to be one of them. I mean, it's so quintessentially Druid. Everything about it just makes a lot of sense. Next up, though, I'm going to go ahead and say Demon Hunter. Might be surprising, but the hunt is one of the coolest spells as well. I think it's a very, very, very cool looking spell. It's a spell that I feel like I always know. Whenever I see it and you just see this guy go flying around the corner, you know what I mean? It's so cool. And it's a very powerful spell, too. I don't know for sure how good I've never played really Demon Hunter much, but I love the concept of it. And I don't necessarily know how cool it would be to have as a tank. But just in general, just having this spell would be so fun to use. It's a 50-yard range, first of all. It's a small cast, though. I mean, I guess I've never used it. Maybe it's a little bit more awkward. But it's everything I would want out of a spell. I mean, it's so freaking cool. I love the concept. Now, I think in the beginning, you used to be able to use it regardless of line of sight, right? Is that no longer a feature? I remember it had some weird line of sight feature. But anyway, I don't even care. It just looks awesome. It's the cool thing about the Night Fae abilities is they all look awesome. That's probably why it's my favorite Covenant, because it's so clearly a Night Fae ability. And even Vengeance, yeah, they have a lot of mobility anyway. So like if Blood DK had the hunt, then yeah. But it's just so cool. Like just seeing this character go flying across the map like that, and it does a lot of damage, and it has some really cool power there. So I really like that one, but I also obviously really like Death's Due. Okay, so I'm gonna say number 3 overall. Might be a little biased here. Death's Due. The spell itself is not really that good, honestly. Like it's very hard to use. Definitely the hardest, probably maybe one of the hardest to use spells in the whole game. I mean, it might be up there with I don't really even want to name anything because it's hard to use and it does take away a spell. So yeah, it's not ideal. I don't love that, but I would say if there was one spell to take away, it'd be Death and Decay because even though Death and Decay is pretty cool as a spell in general, Death's Due is just gorgeous. Like it's so freaking good looking. I don't think I could ever like if I can't use that again, I'm gonna be so upset. I literally might just spend a ton of time in Shadowlands content just dropping Death's Due because beautiful. This was the main reason I originally gravitated towards Night Fae. The aesthetics of this covenant for a Blood Death Knight are fabulous. And all the other ones are good. Every other one is good, but it is just absolutely special. It's something that when you see that on the ground, you know exactly. I can't describe it, and it makes an awesome noise, and soul shape is good. But number 3 overall because Blood DK it's not the strongest spell, and it had to get buffed 2 different times now, basically. The big problem with it was it offered no additional damage, where all 3 other spells did do a lot of damage on their own, and Blood DK already lacks damage, so yeah, it's not ideal, but I do really like the fact that it's up every time you use Death and Decay. It's a 30-second recharge. You're gonna have it up probably every 20 seconds, I think probably on average. So it's just so cool to have that down. Now that they buffed the conduit, love the spell. So yeah, Death Knight is not necessarily your quintessential, not like a druid, but it makes sense. I think it's fine. It looks cool, and I do like the way the armor and stuff looks on plate. So that one's pretty good. But the one that I'd say I really, really, really want to be good and not suck is Night Fae, or I'm sorry, is Paladin. So Blessing of Seasons is certainly the coolest concept that does not translate to a really cool spell. I love the concept. I mean, but blessings in general, in the old days, like that was like one of my favorite reasons to play a paladin was the blessings, kind of the group utility. And prop paladin can bring a lot of group utility. So I will be eventually trying Blessing of Seasons as a prop paladin in Mythic Plus. It's probably not going to be very good, and I think probably still to this day it's looked at as a bit of a meme. Like no matter what they change, it's probably never going to be good because there's really like all 4 of the buffs are really situational. And there's really only 1 and maybe 2 that actually do anything that you really want every time it's up. But I think people focus on that too much because it's not like you're not supposed to have it up 100% of the time. It is a CD of sorts. It's just a CD that kind of cycles. And the main CD portion of it is not bad, but then people are like the other 3 portions of it suck, so the whole ability sucks. And I can understand that because especially anytime you can give your CD to someone else, they always kind of have to tune it, right? Like it can't be overpowered because if it was, then it would be just the best, right? But anyway, I love the concept. Doesn't really translate well. Doesn't really make a lot of sense for a paladin. I mean, I like the concept that it's a blessing, and that's the only thing that keeps it at number 4. But it's actually pretty shit ability. And as a paladin and Night Fae, it just doesn't really look the part either. It's okay visually. It's probably the worst visually, honestly, on the list. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I just wish it was a better spell or more usable. So at this point, I think we're gonna have to say Monk for 5 overall. 5 and 6 are just like a tie in my book. Like I don't really care one way or the other. I really like Feline Stomps, again, the visual of it. But neither of these abilities strikes me as particularly unique. I don't really think I would use them or really enjoy using them very much. They're both very good. Like they're both very good. They're almost very similar spells in that way. Um, but it's just not particularly like I don't really feel like it's that noticeable. I know especially Warriors is a very good spell and it helps with their damage line. I assume Feline Stomp would too. But it's not like, again, Brewmaster and also Warrior. They're not really my favorite. Like this aesthetic is not what I would see for them. So I really like them both as Necrolord. Feline Stomp, and also what's this one actually called? Ancient Aftershock. They look good when you see them on the ground. The Feline Stomp one is definitely a little bit better though, because it kind of does like these weird patterns. It's very interesting. Like the patterns are almost like randomized. It seems like they're different every time you use the spell, and it's pretty cool. I don't think particularly there's much for me to talk about the spells, but this one's just a little bit cooler visually, and I like the concept of that, like how it's kind of like a little bit weird. How you throw the spell down, it's got a little bit weird visual to it. But I mean, Ancient Aftershock's probably the better spell, but it is 1.5 minute CD compared to 30. So yeah, obviously, in this is one charge. I don't know how that works, but anyway, so I just thought this was a cool little video, fun little video to do, throw out on the holiday here. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I would love to think like the question I'm looking to answer with this, and that I'm looking to have kind of thought about is, if you really, really, really want to be a Kyrian, what class do you play? Paladin, right? If you really, really want to be a Night Fae, what class do you play? Maybe Druid. What do you think for Venthyr? What do you think for Necrolord? What do you think for all four? If you had to do that, maybe top two for each covenant, what would you pick? Because I think nobody really does that. And I'm now, especially with 915, it's like a little bit less, like there's no real reason to think about it like that. Obviously, Blood Decay is my main. I wasn't going to switch just for a covenant, but it's really attractive. Like the covenant system is very deep, and even now when you're able to swap, it actually just makes it even better. I originally expected to not like this, but I actually like it a lot more than I expect. And I hope that someday I will be able to play all four covenants and enjoy them. But it's still just really cool. Like, if you wanted to be a Night Fae, it's like so different than being a Kyrian, especially early on. So let me know what you guys think about this. I hope it'll be a fun little video. Maybe have a little fun chat about that. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great holiday. We'll see you soon.